for the content. So yes, Elisa, if you want to do your little intro.
Hi, my name's Elisa Best. I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia. As Kiara said, I am the legal intern with her at Santos Legal Group. So I am a 3 at Liberty University School of Law here in Lynchburg, Virginia. I'm studying along with the JD is to get it's called a Certificate of Concentration in Wealth Management and Financial Planning.
Awesome. So yeah, so this is, we wanted to create this because again, people had reached out to us asking about estate planning. And, honestly, it is something that a lot of people don't talk about, and there are resources out there, which we will cover later on, but it is still an area of law that's just not as obvious, and there's not so much information like widely available. So with that being said, we first wanted to get an idea of who's on here. So if you're a law student or an attorney, if you can please let us know in the chat, just so we can kind of have an idea. We are still going to go through this program with just from the very beginning, as even if you're not in law school, all the way up to if you're a practicing attorney and just maybe interested in this area of law. So we will speak to all of that. So you guys can let us know. Okay, aspiring attorney. Hi, Sherry. Nice, congratulations.
Oh, congratulations.
3L.
Hi. Another 3L.
Hi. Awesome, California, love it. Love it. And then 3L, thank you guys. So that's good. So yeah, like I said, we are going to cover everything from aspiring students to already practicing attorneys. So also with that, there was something else that I wanted to ask before we get into what estate planning lawyer does. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we wanted to ask, is anybody familiar with what an estate planning attorney does prior to us just going ahead and jumping into our discussion for today?
Exactly. Thank you.
And you could just unmute yourself, or you could type in the chat, whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Hi, Zanaya. Anybody want to say? Okay. Anchorage, Alaska. Cool. Very cool. Never been to Alaska.
Hi. If it's okay, I'll just talk. Is that fine?
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
So I am familiar with estate planning so much as I learned in law school, right? And so that include the living wills, a living trust, wills. I'm trying to think what else, but basically planning for not only after death, but in life. So if one is to become incapacitated, who would you have signing off on any type of medical disclosures or issues that you may have? How do you want them to handle your finances when you can't make those decisions for yourself? And so that's about the gist of what I know about estate planning thus far.
Perfect. I love that. And I love that you brought that up, because that is something that I try to tell people too, that it's not just a death conversation. Anybody over the age of 18 should have an estate plan. And so this opens up, a lot of opportunity for us that are interested in estate planning or are in estate planning. The biggest hurdle that I've found is that getting people to understand that, because they do either think it's a death conversation or it's for people who have, millions of dollars, and neither of those are true. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So with that being said, we'll continue on. So what an estate planning lawyer does. So yes, we protect people's assets via the wills or the trust, other living documents like the healthcare proxy, power of attorney, literally everything that Kanisha just said. And so with that, we have to plan with the client. So we sit down, get their family dynamic. That's very important, because not all families work in a traditional sense. So not every parent wants to give their children whatever they have, or, spouses may separate things for different reasons and not want to give it to a spouse. And this could be for tax reasons. They both have sufficient funds or have kids outside of their marriage or situation. So there are many different reasons why the family dynamic is not traditional, and you have to definitely understand that. So with an estate planning attorney, there's a real responsibility in when you're planning for your clients to kind of understand the bigger picture and to be able to fully help them. And so, with this comes, with the family dynamics also comes, unfamiliar situations or uncomfortable situations, such as like having to make house calls. this was something that I didn't even think about as a student. And then when I started working at my first estate planning law firm specifically, but that's something that you have to consider, because even though you can be talking to a 22-year-old who's still young and in good health and we're planning for her, you can also be on the other end of the spectrum talking to somebody who, you know, is terminally ill, 80 years old, can't leave the house. And so that's something that, for example, you'd have to go and make those house calls. Now, this is very specific on what kind of attorney you are and where you're practicing. If you have your own home practice, that is a lot more likely. But if you work at a big law firm, you may not be the one doing that. It really depends. So, you know, I do want to say that too. It's not, you know, and everybody has different comfort levels with that. For me, I know that it was a little bit surprising and uncomfortable at first, but that's a necessity. Some people, if they're that ill, like it's important to be able to still afford them that service and be able to help them and their family. So that's kind of something like different too. And so then with the family dynamics, becoming a mediator for the families, because they might be maybe not in agreement, and sometimes you're kind of tied into that. And so you want to be mindful of that and try to help people. There are a lot of different skills that estate planning attorneys should or can use to kind of help their clients. So don't be shy with that, and being able to help them. Like, for example, me being a certified mediator back in Florida where I practiced. Did we talk about the law schools we went to, Elisa? I don't know if we did. Oh, we should. So I went to FAMU Law in Orlando, Florida. And that's, you know, just so you guys know. So yeah, I was a certified mediator in Florida, but I am now in New York, living in New York. So anyways, the point of that was that I do have a mediator background, and that helps me with estate planning. So whatever experience you have outside of your typical experience that you would think for estate planning, and Elisa too will go into how you can have more than you think you have, you just need to definitely utilize that because it can benefit you. And then lastly, something that some people might not think about when it comes to what an estate planning attorney does is be the trustee of an estate. So you can actually have trust administration within your firm, because a lot of people, they either have banks or individual trustees to be in charge of things, but sometimes they'll have you as a trustee. At our firm right now, we don't offer trust administration, but that is something that I'm definitely open to just kind of down the line, but that is also something that you guys can consider. And again, this will look very different depending on if you're a solo practice, a small firm, or even a big firm. So with that being said, we're going to go into education. So Lisa, if you could tell us the school you went to, and then kind of start off on that.
Yeah, so I go to Liberty University School of Law. I actually transferred into Liberty. So I started my law school journey at Southern University Law Center, and I transferred to Liberty for my second year. So a little bit of how I decided I wanted to get into estate planning. So prior to law school, I had a few family deaths that really impacted my life and also impacted everything in my family. So seeing how assets were distributed after the deaths of loved ones, and also taking property in law school, because that's when I started actually noticing, because when you're that young, you don't really understand what's going on. But once you get to law school, and we all know a little bit of property touches on successions and a little bit of estate. So seeing that's what got my interest in estate planning, because I understood the stress that went behind that. So getting into the education, because as you all know, I'm still in law school, and I had to tailor my law school experience to understand the background of estate planning. So during law school, some of the classes you may want to take, understand that not all law schools are going to offer these classes. So I tried my best to cross-reference some of these classes with different schools. And then you still might have to substitute some of these classes for other electives. So for the first year, bearer of bad news, property. Yes, everybody knows the traumatic present possessory and future estates, future interest in estates. That's going to be very helpful when you take wills, trust, and estates in law school, because you're going to talk about that. And also the traumatic rule against perpetuities. I'm not going to even lie, we're all traumatized by that, but it comes up in that class. A few other classes you may want to take revolves around tax. And I know a lot of us did not go to law school for math, but tax comes up. Tax really does come up in estate planning because there are a lot of tax implications that come into play when planning for your client. So federal income tax, taxation for businesses, because you never know, you might have a client who has an LLC, maybe even a corporation, or maybe a nonprofit. So you probably might want to know the business tax implications for planning for that client. Also, estate and gift tax, you want to know how the language you're using is going to impact their gross, the technical terminology is gross estate. And then other classes relating to math, you might want to take accounting for lawyers so you can understand financial statements, especially as an estate planning attorney. You will most likely be working with financial advisors and other financial experts with your client. So understanding how to read those type of documents that they bring to you from their financial advisors will be very helpful for you. Also, some drafting classes like estate planning, business planning, and if your school doesn't offer that, even contract drafting, so that you understand how to read and write so that everybody in the future can understand what you meant to say. Other classes are such as insurance law or employee benefits, nonprofit organization. Those can be some very critical classes. You just never know what assets your client may have. So it's just a good base to have an understanding. Also, insurance law is very important because you never know, they might have a 401k, a pension plan, an IRA, stuff like that can easily go into a comprehensive estate plan. So, and if your school doesn't offer some of those classes, you can even take family law. Family law would be a really great elective because you will be working with families in situations like these.
I think, Sherry, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I wanted to know at what point in law school are you able to take the classes that you want instead of with the classes that they give to you?
So that's a good question. So usually first year is your schedule is made for you. And then second and third year, that's when you'll be taking a mixture. I know for my school, it's a mixture between required classes and electives. By second year, you don't have many required classes. And third year is maybe one or two at my school at least. And then most of the classes you're taking are electives.
Yeah, and at my school at FAMU Law, and they obviously could have added more courses since I left, the main class that I took was just wills and trust. I believe that was the only class I took, and that was the class that started my interest in this. Actually, he was a great professor, and he actually was able to help me get my first experience at a law firm too, and I'll go into that. But just to stay on topic with the classes, of course, you want to take your required classes and classes that will be on the bar of the state you're going to take, because that's most important. You have to get barred before you can even be an estate planning attorney. So sometimes it is hard to fit all of that onto your schedule, and that'll just be something that you have to look at. And whether you're a 1L and you have an opportunity still to add these classes, or all the way up to a 2 or 3L where it's kind of too late to now add these classes, you still have other options, and that's like probably what you were going to get into now, right? With the we skipped the clinics too.
Yeah. So real quick, I'll just say some schools may offer, concentrations. I know a lot of schools just usually offer the general JD and then you just pick your electives. Some schools are starting to offer concentrations or what they call tracks. So you might have tax, which is the most common, maybe estates and trusts. And what's very new now is wealth management. So you might not see that a lot, because me personally, I only know of 2 schools that offer that, mine and Texas A&M. I know they offer an LLM. I'm not sure if they offer it as a track or a concentration to the JD, but they definitely have an LLM. Some clinics you may take or see at the law school are tax law clinics, estate planning clinics. And if your school doesn't have those clinics, you can also participate in the volunteer income tax assistance program with the IRS if your school has that. And then there are also the joint LLM, the JD LLM programs. Some are available to apply in your second year of law school. So now after law school, you have two forms of education after law school. You can optionally, you can go get an LLM, either tax or estate planning. As I mentioned, there is a new one, the wealth management LLM, but it's very new. I believe it's about maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years old at this point. But the most common is the tax LLM or the estate planning LLM. And then you also have your CLEs. So I'm gonna let Kiara take over for that because of course she has more experience with CLEs than I do.
I know all these acronyms. So yeah, CLE, your continuing legal education. That is something that is required, I think, in most states to some degree. But with that, you can definitely learn a lot about the areas of law. I know that for me, again, with all the services that I offer, they all make sense and they all are needed. And I run across all of them when I'm planning for the estate planning. So that's how it all kind of makes sense. I said all 10 times. But anyways, with the CLEs, like it really is helpful for you if it's an area of law that you're just trying to learn now or just trying to like get more information, because of the estate planning and you're dealing with tax, depending on if you're heavy on the tax knowledge, that changes, right? So you have to stay abreast of the changes anyway. So you're always, and that's the point of the CLE or the continuing legal education, is that you don't just go to law school and, you know, after 40 years of practicing, you never learned anything new. I mean, things do change, you know, although very slow in the law usually. So you want to stay on top of that. But that has been so helpful because I know literally from personal experience how when I first started doing real estate closings in New Jersey, I utilized Lawline, which is a common thing that attorneys have. There are different ones, but I really like Lawline because it gives you CLEs on every topic. So it's not just one specific topic. And the way I did it is I got an unlimited membership so that I can do as many classes as I like. Because sometimes when you pay for these one-off classes, it'll be like $150 or $100, you know, sometimes more. And that racks up. So you might as well just get an unlimited plan and be able to just go into any area. Of course, you don't want to solely rely on the CLE. It is helpful to have some kind of in-person, like real life example, because as we know from law school and as you will learn from law school, it teaches you from an academic perspective, but it's sometimes very different than real life. So you definitely don't want to just solely go off the CLE, but that is definitely a starting point. And for me, because of the agent that I work with, she has been doing this for 15, 20 years. And so that's a good balance where she can fill in that practical experience and I obviously have the legal experience, and then that's how we kind of work together. So CLEs are very, very important. Also with CLEs, and this is just after law school, Elisa talked about the LLM, the CLEs, and after law school, if you're going into estate planning, another resource that is going to be critical is an estate planning software. So some areas of law require this, not all, and I can only speak to what I'm aware of. So for example, with real estate closings, you don't necessarily need software for that. And when I say software, it's very specific to that area of law. It's not like your client database or your law pay or something that you get to pay to have clients pay. And again, this is speaking from a law firm owner. You never would have to worry about this if you're working at a bigger firm or a medium-sized firm anyways. But the software program is definitely gonna be crucial because that will help you. With your trust documents, we're talking about up to 40 pages or more. So you definitely need something that drafts it for you. Even somebody that knows what they're doing, you still kind of need that guidance. And with those software programs, they also give you a bunch of content. And Elisa can speak to this. Every other week or every week, during her internship, we watch an educational video, and sometimes we try to pair it with what she's learning in school, and other times we'll try to pair it with what a client that we currently have is in need of. And so that way, we're both learning. Sometimes it is even above my head because as an estate planning attorney, there's so much that it's impossible to know it all. And it's kind of like you kind of go with it and you learn as you go with your clients. Of course, you still need that foundational knowledge, but you just know that you're not going to know it all. So those are super helpful. Having the CLEs and practice and using those for the areas of law that you want to get into, such as obviously estate planning, and then also within the estate planning software, looking up those educational videos. And all the other resources too, like the ABA has a bunch of stuff, your local bar, those are going to have resources as well. So
definitely. So then, oh, did you want to say something?
You can go.
Hey, can I ask a question really quick?
Mhm.
So, I was recently barred and licensed to practice law in the state of Mississippi,
Mhm.
and I am considering opening up my own firm doing estate planning. So, are there any resources like books that you would suggest that I read before beginning that process? I have the CLEs and the estate planning software and other things that you listed, but I was just wondering like preliminary things that I should maybe review or consider before putting my foot into that practice.
Perfect. So it's really good to hear that you already have some of what I mentioned, because like I said, I relied heavily on, or I did and do rely heavily on those different things. As far as books in particular, not really for books. It's really just researching for just a comprehensive thing. So with your estate planning, making sure that you have other things in place for your clients, like just from a starting up a law firm perspective. But a book on estate planning necessarily, I think it's so much more beneficial to go to these videos and these CLEs, because with a book, I mean, well, maybe you have more time. I guess I'm speaking from somebody who has like very little time with a 13-month-old running around. But I honestly think these online courses are going to be more beneficial than a book. I don't have a book recommendation. If anybody does, like if they've, please put it in the chat. I was going to give you a recommendation for the estate planning software, because that, we use Wealth Counsel. Go ahead. I think somebody. Oh, so we use Wealth Counsel for our estate planning software. There are others out there, and you just kind of, all these things offer trials, so you can test it out and see what works best for you and for your firm. If you're, again, a firm owner. If not, then you obviously will work with whatever program or software that the firm you're working with has. But as far as a book, I don't, Elisa, do you have any book recommendations specifically?
I don't. I mostly read the course books that we have, and then I also watch the videos on Wealth Counsel.
Right. Yeah, and because with those videos, it could be kind of like a book, because they always give you actual material to go along with the video. So that's also good too. Like if for whatever reason you actually want to have written material, they always have the actual like slides or whatever information, so you can use that too. So let's say you look up a bunch of videos and you just want the actual materials, then just get that and you can read that and make your highlights and kind of learn that way too. I mean, everybody's a little different. So wait, did that answer your question before I answer this question? A little bit? Not really. We didn't give a book recommendation.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't get it off mute. Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
And you said Wealth Counsel for the software?
Yes, Wealth Counsel.
Okay.
So we have a question: how much should we expect to pay for estate planning software? So for Wealth Counsel, it's $500 a month, but they have different options. So you can have, like, for example, if you're going to be a trust administrator, you need kind of like a different software for that. So that will increase your price. If you want business drafting software, that will increase your price. So right now for just estate planning, which comes with everything that we talked about, the living will software and drafting, the trust, the living documents, and this is for all 50 states. Even though, like I said, you can give somebody a resource like another attorney or whatever, but you technically can't be the attorney for a client that doesn't live in the state you're barred in for estate planning purposes. But with that, yeah, so it's $500, but I think that's kind of on the lower end, because I know that the firm that I used to work at, she was talking about like $1,000 a month. And again, I don't know what everything that her membership came with, so that will really have your price fluctuate. But 500 is going to be, kind of like your bare bones. And actually, Kanisha might know too, because you said, I don't know if you use Wealth Counsel, but you said you have that estate planning software. So if you want to share how much you pay for that.
No. I meant I was taking notes on the other things that you had mentioned.
Okay. Yeah. So it's pricey, but it's almost like rent. Like it's not negotiable. You need that. You need that support, whether, you're on your own or with other attorneys even. Like that's just, you're going to need that support. What made you choose Wealth Counsel over the other ones? So I had experience with another one at the firm that I was working at before. And that one was geared towards like asset planning and protection. Thank you for asking that question, because that brings me into, even within estate planning, there's like specialties, right? Like you have elder law, and that's for people who are older in age, have more money typically because they're older and they've had their whole lifetime to kind of accrue all these different assets. And so that the software that I was using before, a lot of that was heavily on like your Medicaid kind of clients, where they have that 5-year look back and you have to plan very specifically to make sure that their assets are being protected, versus kind of what I'm doing now. My audience is really, anybody over the age of 18 up until, 50s, 60s, depending on the situation. And so I'm not really worried about Medicaid just yet. Of course, I will be open to, again, doing that because I'm still kind of new myself for my own firm purposes. And so I'm still trying to figure out what I would be interested in offering or doing. But I know that for Elisa, for example, since she's brilliant and already is ahead of the game, she was thinking about like elder law. And so if you want to, Elisa, you want to speak a little bit about the elder law and kind of what?
Oh, yes. So I was interested in, getting some understanding of elder law because I'm not sure how many people know, but there will be, there's an anticipation for the greatest wealth transfer in the United States history with the baby boomer generation. So with that comes, elder abuse, because people, a lot of people are sometimes a little money hungry, just to not to mince words. So with that, you always want to protect your elderly because they need their living as well. And so those assets to them are very important. So that's one of the reasons why I was interested in learning about elder law along with estate planning. So.
Correct, right. And so that's why with your software, and that's why the trial, and I'm still answering a question that I was asked. It said, what made you choose Wealth Counsel over the other ones? So sorry if I didn't, that might have been confusing if I didn't mention that. That was the question asked. So it was the software. That's why you want to do a trial, and it depends on what kind of law, what kind of area within estate planning that you kind of want to focus on. They're all going to offer you the basic. Yes, even Wealth Counsel does, of course, offer the asset protection and the Medicaid planning. But I felt like with the other software, Lawyers, it was called Lawyers with Purpose. That one was just a little bit different. It was very like membership, like tight-knit community, which some people love. I don't necessarily want to be pressured to go to conferences and spend all this extra money to do this, but that's just my personal opinion. Give me the software, thank you. I have a community, and we communicate on there, and I've actually gotten clients from that community. So the community is very helpful, but again, you kind of have to feel it out. They're going to, for the most part, give you the same things, but those extra things that they give you will help you determine what software you want to go with. So thank you guys for the questions. You can always chime in, raise your hand, put it in the chat. This is totally for you guys. Like I said, we were inspired to host this session because we did realize that people had questions, and even from our own experience, I think, and this would be kind of a good entryway into how we got into it before we get into kind of our last section, which will be, experience and resources. So do you want to start off with how you got into estate planning, Elisa? We know why, but how did you?
So it's very interesting. Actually, after my first year of law school, I interned for this big company back in my hometown. It was basically consumer law. They were dealing with debt recovery, and even though it was enjoyable, I still had my interest in estate planning and wealth management, and so. Coincidentally, I found Kiara on Instagram. And how I actually got into it was I reached out to her on Instagram and I asked her if she was looking for an intern. So then she actually was, coincidentally. It was another coincidence. And so learning estate planning with Kiara has been such a pleasure. You can learn so much in school, but estate planning is a lot of hands-on work. And me personally, I'll say that hands-on experience is far more greater than just sitting in a classroom with a brilliant professor, just to say the least, because the drafting is very much different than sitting in a final exam, just saying the Uniform Probate Code would governs this. So that's the real world experience is how I got into it, and why I got into it. So all of that paired together just reaffirms why I want to do this, and it just proves that I love what I do, even as an intern. So yeah.
Good. And I saw Amanda raise her hand. I'm just going to say my experience so we're still on track, and then Amanda will get to you. So really quickly, my experience, like I said, I had a professor at FAMU Law who taught wills and estates. And he was a really, amazing professor. I took business organizations with him too. Anyways, the reason why I thought about wills and trusts and estates is because I felt like my community, my Black and brown people, I'm Dominican, but Afro-Latina. So within my community, I felt like people don't really know about this. I know for sure my family didn't. And I was like, there needs to be somebody like us to help our people create this generational wealth, so we're not starting from scratch again and again. We have to start building. It has to start with us. And so that's kind of what inspired me in that class. I mean, for that reason. And so the professor would always talk about his sister who was doing estate planning in Brooklyn. And that's exactly where I wanted to be. That's where I'm at in New York, Brooklyn. And so I went up to him after class, and this is all going to make sense with what I'm trying to say. So I went up to him after class and I said, hey, you're always talking about this estate planning sister that you have. I actually want to do estate planning, and I'm actually trying to go to New York after I graduate. And he's like, oh my gosh, yes, she's looking for people, whatever. He made the connection. I started doing an externship and an internship with her and working for her after I graduated law school. And that was my experience from a solo practice, pretty much. Just that was the bulk of my experience with estate planning. And so what I want to bring up to you guys, everybody in this room, is that both Elisa and I went up and went to somebody who we think could help us and just asked. And that is so important. You have to just be open to asking people for help. And it's not even really help because you're helping them too, right? Like you're just kind of asking for guidance. And so I think I encourage all of you here, and I'm so glad that you guys are here. And that's why I said I've opened up our email too, if you want to email us for like other questions, and we'll be more than glad to assist, because we do recognize how like hard and hidden some of this information is. And it's really helpful, I think, to see it in real world, because again, it's just more, it's easier to understand, and there's more of a community that way. So just like Elisa came to me, I came to that professor, and it just turned into this, whole other experience that I couldn't have imagined. So that is my experience getting to estate planning. And then Amanda, you raised your hand. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I did. Okay, so my question is, like, I work like in a financial like sector or whatever, and we deal with like wealth management, money, help people with their assets, more like investment type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like, where's the fine line? But these people, they have like we have to work to get our series 7, 10, 66. So, and you're like, that's from more of like, I don't know, like business or whatever. So where's the fine line where you can help individuals with their estate planning and management? Because I told my job, hey, I want to do more of the contract side.
Mm-hmm.
But where's the fine line where it's like, okay, you're going to need a JD to do this? Versus, because some of these people, they don't have their law degree, but they have like their certifications and stuff in their financial sector.
Yeah, that's a very great question. And we need to talk more about finance, and Elisa, can help from this angle too. But just quickly, from the financial aspect, like she was saying, like Lisa was saying earlier too, with the tax classes and everything, these financial people are crucial. Whether you are that person that understands tax and you have an extra LLM in taxation or not, you're either gonna have to work with people that understand this or learn it yourself. I'm kind of in between. I know my limitations. So as I'm learning, I do feel comfortable advising people from a financial perspective, but definitely not when it comes to like, depending on their situation. If it comes to like more complex issues when it comes to the tax purposes, I'm always like, hey, talk to your financial advisor, give me their contact, let me talk to your financial advisor, because and even within the financial industry, there are different things. So for me, the financial person that I want my client to talk to is somebody who understands their whole portfolio. And that person is going to be the best one to speak to, because they're going to understand every aspect of this. Because if we're over here creating this trust that says, put this asset into this specific trust, but we don't know the other family dynamics that are going on behind the scenes, or their business interests and the people they're in business with, we might be doing more of a disservice to that person than helping them, because we're over here drafting language that is not going to help them. And so from a financial perspective, definitely there can be a fine line. And I think that contract drafting, Amanda, is where you're getting into that fine line. But I don't come from a financial background. And so I don't know what they would say to that. I just know from my perspective, I think that is the bulk of what the attorney is to do, is to actually draft and make sure that the legal language makes sense for what they're trying to do. And then the financial is more like definitely advising them from a financial perspective. So that is my take on it. Elisa, do you want to add to, you know, kind of that fine line and where that is?
I was gonna say exactly what you said. The fine line would be the drafting portion, because from my present knowledge, only the lawyer can draft the estate planning documents. The financial experts, they advise financially what to do with those assets, what to do with the portfolio and all their investments, but they can't draft a will, they can't draft a trust. They can just inform the client, hey, you can put this in a trust, but you're gonna have to get a lawyer.
Yeah, that's the safest way to go, because, you know, obviously people create their own, you know, holographic wills in a sense, and you can go, I think people have said LegalZoom. I'm not familiar with their process. You can do those things, but that's not, you know, advisable at all. So I think, Amanda, for you too, just to protect, you know, yourself, attorneys, there's more responsibility on an attorney and what they can do, but still you kind of want to, you know, be careful with that or be mindful of that. But your background in finance is so helpful and so critical. You know, so for anybody in here who still has an opportunity to take tax classes or other financial classes, I do encourage you, like wealth management, to have just a background. You don't have to be an expert on it by any means, but it will really help you when you're drafting and understanding somebody's situation.
Definitely.
You're welcome. She said, thank you for answering. And so then our last little section was just going to be internships, you know, private practice, and how that looks.
Yeah, so with internships, getting that experience, that hands-on experience is very critical, especially client interaction. You know, I love when Kiara lets me listen in on client consultation calls to just hear how to interact with clients. That's going to be very critical with practicing estate planning, because you're always going to be interacting with your clients. Oh, she asked what's law school I attend. I attend Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. It's a fairly new law school. I think 2006, 2007. So then you also have, you know, your private practice, where you'll deal with more everyday people, maybe some high net worth people, depending on who you know. You might know some very important people. And then you have your mid-sized law firms where you'll deal with, tongue-tied, where you'll deal with more high net worth individuals. And then your larger law firms are your what's considered ultra high net worth individuals. And so that's definitely where you want to know tax, because they'll most likely require you to have a tax or estate planning LLM.
Yeah, I thought I cut you off.
No.
No, that's definitely true. But see, even with the large law firms, you might be in different departments. So some people in the drafting department, some people will be, you know, the consultation department. Like, you know, with these big firms, it's so compartmentalized. I don't know if that word fits here, but there are different sections. So you might not have to understand the whole thing or be involved in the whole process from beginning to end. It just depends. If you're solo, private practice, small firm, obviously you will be. And then one thing that we didn't touch on is probate. That is technically, it's anti-estate planning sometimes, because it means you didn't plan, but not necessarily. So with probate, that's another thing that you guys might want to consider. I did a lot of probate at my internship experience. And just like Elisa said, nothing can replace real world experience, because what I learned in wills and estates, it was helpful. And sometimes I would surprise her and she'd be like, oh, wow, like, you know, impressive that I know what I'm talking about, but is nothing compared to like real world problems that you'll have to solve. The cases are always fun, because that's the most real world you're going to get, obviously. But definitely the internship is critical to try to obtain. So with the internship, like I was saying about probate, that can be part of your practice if you want it to be, whether you have an option or not. Like, again, if you're working at a bigger firm or not. But for me personally, I have a current probate case. I'm not too excited about those just because that usually involves, not usually, but it can involve families disagreeing on things, and it's kind of more of a headache. And that's why I always try to push people to just plan ahead of time. But why I said that probate doesn't necessarily mean somebody didn't plan is because maybe they just have to probate some assets and not all. So, with the recent passing of Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, of course, that was interesting. And Elisa was one she saw at first where he didn't have a will. And so everybody's like, how could that be? Like, why, and there could be so many different reasons. And I would hope that he managed his assets differently and had beneficiary designations or a trust here or there. It's still weird that he wouldn't have a pour over will into a trust, but we don't really know. So just because it is probate doesn't mean they didn't plan in other ways, but that is something that you guys may or may not be interested in. It might be something that you find fun. And the estate planning and probate, it is lucrative, and there are people who need it, but it is kind of hard to, like I said, in the beginning, to get people to understand why they need estate planning. Probate, it's after the fact. So, they need you regardless. And that's why I try to tell people, actually, your estate plan, although it can be costly, it's saving you money, because when it comes to probating, the attorney is going to be asking for a percentage for the most part, or a flat rate. Good attorneys here in New York ask for 5%, of an estate. And that can be a lot depending on how much money the person has. And that's just the attorney's fees, but there could be other fees, because you might, with your final tax returns, that might be another chunk. Other creditors, that might be another chunk of money that's coming out of that estate. So it really can dwindle down the assets that you have. So again, probate is necessary, and you guys might want to consider that, because it kind of ties into estate planning, depending on how people define it and their interest. But I did kind of want to bring that up just because we had not talked about probate. So I think, the last thing we're going to talk about are the resources for you guys. And so we've kind of talked about it throughout the whole event. I'm interested in all of that. Yeah, there's money to be made, Amanda, for sure. It's just kind of the hardest part is getting the clients. But definitely once you have them, there's definitely money to be made. So lastly, for the resources, is there anything that we have not talked about yet as far as resources, Elisa?
So recently, I'm not sure what prompted this, but recently, the law firm Baker McKenzie, they started a tax career mentor program. I do know that for this year that the application is closed. However, the current law students in here, or the aspiring law students in here, you can always keep an eye out for that during your law school career. We didn't mention the ABA probate and property journals. So for the law students, ABA membership, student division membership is free, and you can get a monthly subscription to certain practice areas. I have the subscription to the probate and property practice area. So those are actually really helpful, because you get journals every month, even a magazine, and it just has different articles discussing estate planning and probate and all the different things that we talked about today.
And you were talking about the ABA journals, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. The ABA journals. And then even on LinkedIn, there are networks. So both me and Kiara are in the Trusted Estates network on LinkedIn. And then, we also found a new association. It's the Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals. That's fairly new. So you can join on LinkedIn. I'm not sure how active they are just yet, just because, like I said, it's fairly new, but you can join and find a mentor or ask some questions. Oh, it was the Baker McKenzie Tax Career Mentor Program.
Can you type that? I don't even know what it, yeah.
Yeah, I'll type it.
That one, I don't know.
I think that's all the resources.
Yeah, there are definitely, there are definitely resources out there. Again, the most important is to actually get your foot in the door, I think, and have some experience, like real world, and see how people operate. Again, that will vary widely depending on the type of firm. But any experience will be helpful, because from my experience, I've learned so much and at the time I was like, maybe didn't appreciate just how much I was learning. And now when I'm talking to Elisa or thinking about things, I'm like, this is literally what she told me. So I really, you do learn a lot, even if in the moment you don't realize it, just with any experience. And you have to put in the work too to get what you want out of it. So you need to, ask the questions and be willing to do certain things so you can learn. So does anybody have any last minute questions? Because we still have a little bit of time. If not, just remember, you can reach out to us on our email. We prompted, okay, I'll answer that in a second. We were prompted to create this because people were reaching out, which again goes to what I was saying. You have to be willing to speak up and ask questions, because if not, people wouldn't know. I didn't think that the people that did reach out to me, that they would be interested in this. And that's when I talked to Elise and I was like, hey, we should do this. So with that being said, if there is something more specific, like a specific subject matter that you guys kind of want to know more about, I think we'll be more than willing to create our own little network as well, and just host sessions like these and be transparent in our experience and what we know. So the Brianna's question, do you charge a flat rate or an hourly rate for estates? So currently I am charging a flat rate, and it includes funding, which is sometimes different for different attorneys. Like the funding of the trust, for example, will be something that they'd have to pay extra for, or that they just wouldn't do and they'd hand that off to a banker, for example. And when I say funding a trust, that just means titling the assets differently. So if it's a house, you put it from your name into the irrevocable trust or the living trust's name. That's what I mean by funding the trust. You have to actually put assets into the trust. So right now, yes, my flat rate does include all of that and the funding. That can change because, again, the firm itself is newer, so I'm always changing and thinking of new ways to do things. But currently, it is a flat rate, and that primarily comes from my experience too, and that's kind of what I've modeled after that. Do you know when the next Zoom will be? Maybe a next topic will be how to start your own law firm. That'd be fun. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. This is my second second time doing this. For people who know me, before Santos Legal Group, I did have another firm, with another partner. So yes, I know a thing or two about having to start this stuff from scratch, and it's a lot, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it. So yes, definitely, Amanda, I'll keep that in mind. And again, anybody else, if you have any ideas on what else we can talk about, we'd be more than willing to. I know for my firm, we are looking always for estate planning interns. As much as we'd love Elisa to stay with us, we don't, her plans might be so much bigger. So, there might be an opening, or working with Elisa, whatever the case may be, just keep that in mind too. And that's pretty much it. What email should we send further questions to?
Yeah, while she's doing that, some frequently asked questions. What could be, what are some skills needed to practice estate planning? So think about, your interpersonal and your intrapersonal skills, because communication is going to be key with your clients. And so you want to know, how to work with your clients, and just knowing yourself in doing so. Also, organization. You never know. You might have a lot of clients and they might have a lot of assets, and they might need a lot of documentation from you. So that organization is going to keep you very well rounded in your practice. And also teamwork, because as we said earlier, you might be working with a team of financial experts. And so just knowing how to work well with other people on a team will be very critical. Another question could be, do you need to know finance or financial planning to practice estate planning? Not necessarily, because as I said, easily have a group, like a team of financial experts backing you with that client. But having a baseline of some of that would be very helpful, so you know how to draft those documents. Because I know for me, I studied pre-law in undergrad. I have no clue what any of this. I'm not gonna say I have no clue. I had no clue prior to my tax classes and my accounting classes in law school. Because let me tell you, in law school, when you get that, when they just put the book in front of you and you're just looking at it like, what? So for me, I'm kind of glad that I had that, I have that opportunity to learn about it prior to, getting a client and their financial experts are just talking all their financial jargon, and I'm just gonna sit there and look like I have no clue what you're saying. And yeah, so having that baseline would be very helpful. And then also, one last question is, you know, what are other opportunities to practice estate planning outside of a law firm? So you can go for those JD, they're called JD Advantage careers in banks, trust departments, other fiduciary related jobs. So the opportunities are actually endless. Is just, you know, finding the stuff. And that's another reason why we did this, is because sometimes finding these opportunities can be hard. I know for me it was hard. But yes, yeah, those are some of the frequently asked questions. So
Thank
is
you.
there any other questions, you know, to reach out?
Definitely. I included the email contact@santoslegalgroup.com. Any internship opportunity would be for the spring, you know, and that can be ongoing. Again, it just depends on our availability and everything like that. So definitely, if you follow us on Instagram, that's definitely where we will post it. Of course, on our Facebook and LinkedIn as well. But whatever channel that you want to follow us on, that will be there with the information when it comes to that. And so things that for internship advice, I guess, from somebody looking over internship applications in a sense, definitely you want to put yourself out there, and whether it be on social or not, but you want to show the person that you have some experience or interest. Maybe not even just the experience, but like a genuine interest in this area of law. That's very helpful. Like I said, Elisa, first of all, what stood out from the beginning was that she even reached out, because at the time we weren't even advertising this. So that already was like, you know, I remembered her even with the other applications coming in. So that, you know, be willing to put yourself out there and say, ask or say, I don't remember exactly what you said, Elisa, but I do remember, you know, the conversation. So definitely from somebody looking at these internships, just show your experience. Oh, also that she had something about like wealth management class. I always forget what it was. See, because it doesn't really, like the exact details don't matter. It's, you know, that connection with the person and that you can tell that they know what they're talking about, or they have a genuine interest. That will take you much further than what your resume kind of says. Although you obviously want to make that look good as well. And one last thing that I'll tell all of you guys is that, like I told Elisa, whether you're going to open up your own practice or work at a big, medium, small law firm, always be advertising yourself, because people need to know who you are. Because even an employer, they're going to look at your social media. Again, if you have a social media presence, they're going to see what you've done and what you're into. So definitely, whatever situation you're in, still be investing in yourself, gaining the actual real world knowledge, and just kind of acting in that way on social media. And we all use our social media for different reasons. So I'm not going to be like, okay, if you use Instagram, for example, as purely like just to communicate with friends and family, that's perfectly fine. But just if you're interested in putting yourself out there into the community as, oh, hey, I do this, and this is, you know, this is how I know how to do these things, whatever it may be, in whatever way, invest in yourself and make that known to the public and to your community. And then I have another question here. Do you mentor new attorneys? I am open to that. So again, reach out, because was I open to it before that question? Not, you know, I wasn't thinking about it, person who messaged me. So reach out, and and we can make that happen. So thank you guys so much. Just about an hour. We will have this recording available at some point on somewhere. Don't know the details.